Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I'm going to talk about Sweet Home, specifically the live-action TV show, as well as the Webtoon Manhwa. I'm kind of doing a bit of a compare and contrast video because I'm completely caught up with the TV show, and I also, just yesterday at the time of me recording this, just finished reading the Webtoon in its entirety. So like I said, I just wanted to kind of do this interesting compare and contrast. I might dabble in some spoilers here and there. Maybe not. I'll probably try to keep it as vague as possible. Just do be warned ahead of time, but because it's really interesting what I've kind of discovered so far. So, because there's a lot of similarities, but there's also a lot of differences, and it's so interesting that, first and foremost, I'd say, like, if you've watched, say you've watched a TV show and you've never read the Webtoon, or you've read the Webtoon and you've never watched a TV show, check out the other, like, version of the story, because they are similar enough, but there's also different experiences you'll get because the story beats, it's overall a lot of similar story beats, but they go in different directions in certain aspects, and I'll kind of dive into that more in a little bit, because like this thing I talked about during my review of season 1 was that just having scanned the thumbnails, like, you know, the little pictures from the Webtoon, like the future chapters, because there's like a total of 140 chapters. I saw a picture, I'm like, oh, does it seem like we're going in the same direction as where the show, because at that point I think I just finished watching the season finale, I think, but that is very true. Like, the ending to the Webtoon is quite different from the season 1 finale. The season 1, and the reason why I'm making that direct comparison is because, without really going into spoilers too much, basically, if you've watched the show, all of where season 1 plays out, with the exception of, like I said, some details, and the ending in its entirety, is basically the entire Webtoon, all 140 chapters. And some of those differences are, some of the story beats are slightly changed in that some of the encounters with some of the monsters happen at different points. And obviously I talked about this too, like some of the story beats of, like, the storytelling devices of, you'll be going through things like real-time present day, and then you'll rewind like a little bit, like maybe a couple hours or something, to be like, oh, this is what was happening earlier, and then you connect the story in that bit. They don't really do that as much with the live action show. They kind of keep things kind of going forward, not as much back, with the exception of certain story beats, but for the most part they don't do that as much as like the Webtoon does. So that's one of the subtle differences. Also, there's certain monsters that get encountered in the Webtoon that we don't see in the TV show. There's also backstories. Like, two great examples I'll give you is, if these will mean nothing out of context, but the speedster monster and the green slime one, you get a little more context about their circumstances in the Webtoon than you do the TV show. Specifically the green one, because the show does not cover the green one's circumstances at all. Same thing for the speedster. You just get a little bit more of like, oh, this is what the speedster monsters, like, oh, who they were before. You get a little bit of that. There's quite a bit added for the, like, green slime thing, because you get nothing at all, and it does add more context to understanding its situation. I don't know if that makes it more tragic in the Webtoon or the TV show. In the Webtoon, you being able to have an idea of its circumstances, that seems like that makes it sadder. But there's also story beat things that simply don't, well, for one, either the live action completely skips over some of that stuff, which includes some of the monster encounters, or it entirely, like, just changes stuff, which also falls into the characterizations, which is so interesting. Like an example would be like Hyun. His character, the logical, like, hey, I'm doing douchebag things that people might not like, but it's for the greater good, that element to the character is still there, but he's a lot more stoic in the TV show, whereas in the Webtoon there's a little more levity and nerdiness to his character, that he's also always kind of like hides like his machinations behind like a smile and stuff. He seems like kind of super friendly and easygoing on the outside. That element is not really there with the character to kind of keep him, like, worse sides of his personality are a lot more prevalent. And the whole, like I said, he's kind of a nerdy dude. That is a thing him and Hyun kind of connect over. It's not a thing at all really in the TV show. So once again, it's like a Webtoon. I think you have more time to breathe and kind of elaborate on that stuff. I don't know if that's just a creative decision of, like, it doesn't really add enough, and maybe that's also meant to kind of keep the show a little more grounded live action wise in comparison to, you know, you're able to be a little more, like, wacky with the webtoon. Hyun and Jisu have a decent enough relationship in the live action, but they're definitely closer in the webtoon because in the live action, and it's where we kind of get spoiler territory, Eun-yu ends up being kind of filling a little bit of that Jisu role, like her relationship with Hyun kind of fills that Jisu and Hyun dynamic. I'm curious what made him decide to do that, because I talked about it at the time, like, because Eun-yu's character is on the younger side in the webtoon, but they kind of make her about the same age as Hyun in the TV show, so I thought that was kind of an interesting change, and I think that's why they did that. Because that also kind of goes into my point, and apparently this happens a lot with adaptations, but certain characters are kind of amalgamations of different characters. Like certain character traits that might belong to this character ends up getting mixed into this character, and that causes this character who might not have had those story beats in the webtoon now have them in the live action. Like a great example of a character that's quite different is Hyun. If you've seen the live action, she's the lady with the dog. Her character is so different from what she is in the webtoon, because she's more like other characters that exist in the live action. It's like they took a lot of her character and kind of divided amongst other people. Byung-gil's character is super different as well. They're very like middle of the road in the live action, but they are very distinct in the webtoon, which is so interesting. A lot of these characters, like I said, it's an amalgamation of different stuff. The one I thought about at the time, I was like, is Yikyong a character from the webtoon? I felt like she wasn't at the time, but like I did confirm, like, she does not exist. She is someone they made specifically for the show, and that ends up being a conversation without going into spoilers, because basically season 2 on, at least from where season 1 ends, like I said, the ending to season 1 is different from how the webtoon ends. So the events leading up to it are quite different. Like I said, there are some similarities, but there's quite a bit kind of change throughout, but especially in the ending of aftermath of how everything plays out, especially with like what is kind of considered your main antagonist, and how that situation's kind of played out in the live action from the end of season 1 into season 2. That's not really a thing. It's quite different. In fact, there's an associated character in the webtoon that plays that role, but they're not the antagonist to the extent that they are in the live action. So it's really interesting. Like I said, at the time, my assumption was that season 2 was basically its own thing for the TV show, and it kind of is. You know, where the webtoon ends, there's still wiggle room for how the webtoon ends could actually end up playing a role in the show. Because to be fair, you kind of get to explore things more. I'll leave it at that. But if you read the webtoon, you get to explore things a little bit more. There's actually, interestingly enough, there's some stuff that was introduced near the end of the webtoon that doesn't, I mean, to be fair, a lot of this stuff doesn't get any answers. You get some vague answers in the webtoon, a little more elaborated on nearing the end, but still no definitive answers about, like, the whole situation that makes people transform into monsters. But, like, there's an element to it that's like thrown in at the end, and you're like, what does that mean in the grand scheme of things? You never get an answer to it, and I guess that's kind of like it. This is the circumstance. It's an apocalyptic situation, kind of very Walking Dead-esque of, you don't need to know how the virus started. It is what it is. Just accept the world as it is, and it's kind of that. You're not going to get answers, and the show's kind of been in that same vein. This element I'm talking about that was kind of introduced pretty late in this webtoon, it's there. They sprinkled it in. We've seen 2 instances of it. They even like have a post credits stinger that correlates to this. If you've seen the show, you know the thing I'm talking about. Once again, I'm trying to talk around it, but that situation probably will get explored a lot more and explained a lot more in the TV show than it got explained at all, because it wasn't explained at all in the webtoon. So that could be something we handle. So I could definitely see that being something we like I said, it was sprinkled in season 2, but it'll probably get explored a lot more in season 3, which does in itself mean that we could still end up with the same ending as the webtoon. We'll just have like more in between, because certain aspects of the ending of the webtoon kind of play into season 2's story a bit. Another interesting thing is Hyun's monsterization. because they don't really lean into the nerdy element of his monster, like, I mean, the nerdy element of it doesn't really come into play until like the end when it comes to his monsterization, but like how it's represented in the TV show, once again, no spoilers, but it's vastly different from how it's represented. I mean, because for the most part, he never gets to that stage for most of it, but also like any transformation type of thing stays, like I said, manifests itself quite differently. Still could end up, I doubt it will be a one-to-one, because like I said, that's built into Hyun, a certain aspect of Hyun's character that's there in the webtoon that's not there at all in the live action. So I don't see them doing a one-to-one. So how his transformation plays out in the webtoon, they probably won't go that far. They'll probably expand upon what's already been introduced for him in the show, like I said, because his transformation is way different in the show. I thought that was so interesting too, because I was like, oh, I having already seen the show, I was like, so will they tie in, will the ending of this tie into why his transformation is what it is in the TV show? But it's like, no, it doesn't. So it's just, I guess that was just some artistic liberties that they took for the TV show. They're like, we're going to just go down this route. Once again, that's an adaptation for you. And like I said, that just goes back to my earlier conversation of they're both worth checking out, because it's like two very different versions of the story, you know? I mean, once again, that's an adaptation for you. And even if you're not the biggest fan of the TV show, which I know some people aren't, you still always will have the webtoon type of, that's my argument. And I'm kind of fine with it not being a one-to-one, because to me, like, that's boring for things to be an exact one-to-one, because it's like, well, you already have the original source material, let it be the true canon. And, you know, with the live action, you can kind of, you know, if with an adaptation, you can, you know, change things up a little bit, as long as at its heart, it's still the same, which to me, the live action still is. Once again, people probably could debate that, and that's perfectly fine. But from my perspective, it's at its heart the same, like story beat wise. You want to make some changes here and there. You know, that's fine. Want to shift up some of the characterization, some of the story beats, I'm fine with that. Seeing some of those differences and now having like a fuller context of it all is quite interesting. I'm actually not sure in the grand scheme of things which one would probably be more depressing, because I think they both kind of go, at least in my head, back and forth between like the webtoon's more depressing. It's like, well, certain aspects make the show a little more depressing. So it's kind of, I think they both do a really good job of capturing that, like, hopelessness sometimes that pops up in the story. So this was just something I've been rattling off in my head for a while, especially as the more and more I've read of the webtoon. I wanted to kind of make sure I had it finished before I ended up watching, before season 3, which is potentially the final season, comes out this summer. I just wanted to kind of have a full context of compare and contrast, and especially now knowing how the webtoon ends, to see if we end up to that point with the show or not. That's gonna be an interesting thing. But like I said, I just wanted to kind of have that conversation. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments down below. What is your experience with Sweet Home? Have you read the webtoon? Have you watched the TV show? Maybe you've read all of the webtoon but only seen part of the TV show because maybe it wasn't for you, or maybe you've only seen the TV show and never read the webtoon. Like I said, I would highly recommend, if you've done one and not the other, to do both, just because it's such an interesting, they're just interesting story experiences. So let me know your thoughts about the discussion in general in the comments down below, but also Sweet Home in general, your favorite version of the, you know, whether it's the webtoon, whether it's the live action, what are your thoughts on one versus the other, and you, like you said, my thoughts on them and my comparing and contrast and your own comparing and contrast. I'm kind of mumbling and rambling on. I do apologize. Just let me know all your thoughts about Sweet Home in general. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.